The current government shutdown has now become the longest in U.S. history. Since 1977, there have been 21 shutdowns. What are the 5 longest ones? Why did they happen? And how did they finally come to an end? Let's break it down. All right, let's start with number 5. It lasted 16 days during the Obama administration in 2013. The dispute centered around the Affordable Care Act. Congress failed to agree on a budget after Republican lawmakers pushed to defund Obamacare. Senate Democrats and the Obama administration rejected those proposals, setting off a partial government shutdown in early October of that year.
Well, last night I signed legislation to reopen our government and pay America's bills. The first government shutdown in 17 years is now over.
The shutdown finally ended on October 16th when both chambers of Congress voted to fund the government through January 15th and extend the debt limit.
There are no winners here.
No winners indeed. The 16-day shutdown cost, by one estimate, $24 billion and hurt U.S. credibility around the world.
Minor changes were made to the Affordable Care Act, like requiring income verification for those receiving health care subsidies. President Obama signed the bill shortly after midnight on October 17th, ending the shutdown. Moving on to number 4, the 4th longest shutdown lasted 17 days during the Carter administration in 1978. It was one of 5 shutdowns that happened under President Jimmy Carter. This one started with several disagreements, including funding for abortion and a defense spending bill to build a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. That's something President Carter called wasteful spending. The government reopened after Congress passed legislation that excluded funding for the aircraft carrier and a public works project, while also maintaining a compromise on abortion funding. This takes us to number 3. The 3rd longest government shutdown lasted 21 days during President Clinton's administration in 1996.
And there is very little indication this evening that the White House and the Republicans in Congress are going to resolve their differences about how and when to balance the federal budget.
At the time, Republicans had just taken control of the House for the first time in decades. Clinton and Republicans clashed over how to balance the nation's budget, and the president vetoing a Republican budget proposal to give control of Medicaid to the states.
We can balance the budget without doing what they seek to do.
The shutdown ended when Republicans agreed to a proposal made by Clinton.
Republicans agreed to bring all federal workers back and pay them until January 26th. But there will be no money for workers to spend on programs House Republicans regard as unessential, such as foreign aid, the Peace Corps, and environmental protection.
Moving on to the 2nd longest government shutdown in U.S. history, it happened in 2019 during President Trump's first term. At the time, the Senate failed to pass a funding bill that included a $5.7 billion request from President Trump to help build a wall along the southern border.
Even if it has no wall money? Or does it have to have wall money?
I only, look, I have other alternatives if I have to, and I'll use those alternatives if I have to. And we want to go through the system. We have to have a wall in this country.
The shutdown cost the U.S. economy an estimated $3 billion. It finally ended when Trump signed legislation to reopen and fund the government.
The short-term deal, no money for a wall. Back pay for federal workers who missed paychecks, but not for thousands of federal contractors who aren't covered by laws governing shutdowns. And a bipartisan congressional conference will try to hammer out a deal on border security.
That 2019 stalemate held the record for the longest shutdown in American history until now. The current shutdown has officially surpassed the 35-day mark.
The president trying to ramp up the pressure, threatening mass layoffs and cuts to programs.
We can do things during the shutdown that are irreversible.
It began after both parties failed to pass competing spending measures, a Democratic-backed bill that would have extended the Affordable Care Act subsidies and reversed cuts to Medicaid, and a Republican stopgap bill that would have kept the government running for 7 more weeks. Democrats are pushing to extend expiring tax credits that have helped millions of Americans afford health insurance. Republicans, meanwhile, insist they will not negotiate on those provisions until the government is reopened, accusing Democrats of holding the government hostage to have those health care negotiations. Across the country, hundreds of thousands of federal employees remain without pay. SNAP benefits and air travel operations are facing growing disruptions. Vote after vote has failed to break the impasse on the Senate floor, and both sides are not close to a deal. How long will this stalemate last? Only time will tell.